In episode 24, I talk with former Gastonia pitcher Bryan Sammons. Fresh off making his MLB debut with the Tigers, get ready to hear about the Motown Maestro. Our guest today is from Wilmington, North Carolina, attended Western Carolina University, drafted by the Minnesota Twins in 2017, made his big league debut for the Detroit Tigers this past season. I know a guy, and his name is Bryan Sammons. Bryan, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thanks for coming on. When you were with Gastonia in 2023, did you think you'd make it to the big leagues in 2024?
Yeah, obviously I was hoping and still working for it, but I didn't know if it was actually going to happen. Though. It was a dream come true to actually get to live that day. So
Made 6 appearances for the Tigers this past season. You went 1-1 with a 3.62 ERA, a .91 WHIP, only allowed 16 hits and over 27 innings pitched. Do you consider it a successful stint with Detroit this year?
yeah, I felt like it was a pretty successful stint. Like there's always things you can work on, but overall I was really happy with how I pitched up there and look forward to building off of that. So.
Now, you made your Tigers debut on July 29th. Jack Flaherty was scratched. He got traded to the Dodgers, I believe, a day after you made that spot start. So what was running through your head when you found out that you were going to be activated when AJ Hinch had you in his office and told you that you were indeed going to pitch?
Yeah, well, the day I made my debut, I drove up there and not really knowing if it was going to happen or not. So going into AJ Hinch's office and him telling me like, "Hey, you're gonna be activated and you're gonna pitch today," it was just kind of a surreal moment, and it all kind of happened so fast. I don't know if it really had time to like kick in or whatever at the time, but it was a surreal moment for sure.
After you have that conversation with Hinch, you knew you were making essentially a spot start in your MLB debut. You sent a message to the Gastonia group chat from 2023. How much did your Gastonia teammates mean to you for you to send really a heartfelt message telling them where you were?
Oh yeah, no, even though I wasn't necessarily in Gastonia a super long time, like we were all down there grinding out together, and a lot of those guys gave me some helpful advice that maybe I don't make it if I never played with Gastonia. So I definitely wanted to let them know and just appreciate all their support. So,
How much nerves, adrenaline did you have leading up to the game?
uh, yeah, I would say leading up to the game, I was probably a little nervous, excited, and nervous. And like once my name was called to run onto the field and everything, it all just kind of went away. And at that point, it just got back to being baseball and the same game it's always been. So,
Did you have any changes in your routine that day?
uh, the only real change was that normally, like in the minor leagues, I was starting, and that day I didn't technically start. So I went out with the relievers, but like 3 hours for the game or whatever, instead of like starter goes out right before the game. But other than that, routine, try to keep it the same as much as possible and just be consistent as much as possible with it.
Do you have any superstitions, any certain things you like to do during your routine?
Um, Nothing too crazy. I wouldn't call it superstition. On the days I know I'm pitched, I usually just listen to Christian music as a way to kind of remind myself that more than anything that there's things bigger than baseball. Like baseball matters, but at the end of the day, whether I pitch good or I pitch bad, there's bigger things in life. And then outside of that, just like do regular like plyos, bands, might do like a little primer lift to kind of get my body going a little bit, but nothing too crazy.
In that debut on July 29th, you went 7 1/3 innings pitched against Cleveland. That's the longest outing by a Tigers pitcher in a debut since Andy Van Hecken threw a complete game shutout in 2002. Did you know that stat?
I was told that stat. Yeah, that's
How proud are
pretty.
you? How proud are you to be
Yeah,
able to accomplish that?
yeah. No, it was definitely really cool when I heard that stat. I obviously had no idea, and then to see that stat and to someone go down the record books in my debut was pretty cool. So
Perhaps your best performance came on August 14th. You allowed one run in 5 2/3 innings, punched out four in a game. You won on an Akil Baddoo walk-off double in the 10th inning. How electric was that game, especially since it was really in the thick of that Tigers postseason push?
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. Playing those guys was a lot of fun, and just see guys go up there and felt like the coolest part was that wasn't. I didn't feel like there was one guy or two guys that were carrying us. It felt like every single night we had a new guy that came up clutch, and that night it just happened to be Akil Baddoo, and it was a lot of fun to see the tide start to turn around in the season at that point.
You guys really had an improbable postseason run. You went 31-11 down the stretch, made the playoffs for the first time since 2014 to the Tigers. What do you attribute the run to? You just said it was a lot of different people on different nights contributing. Was it AJ Hinch? Was it a collective buy-in? Was it a kind of if you're hot situation? What do you really attribute it to?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of the things where a lot of little things turn into a big thing. Where I mean, AJ did a good job of pulling the strings at the right time. The pitchers bought into kind of the pitching chaos or whatever that we were doing. We had a couple guys like Kerry Carpenter and Riley Green were hurt for a while and they got healthy, which having those two guys back in your lineup is always going to help. Parker came back up and he was probably one of the best center fielders in baseball for once he came back up at the end of the year. So just one of those things where everybody who came up, everybody who they brought up pitched well and played well. So we were all able to put together. There was no, other than Scooble being the Cy Young and the best pitcher in baseball this year, there wasn't anybody who just carried the team. It was everybody just collectively stepping up when they were needed.
That was great when AJ Hinch was like Scooble and then pitching chaos
Yeah.
playoffs. I thought that was really funny. And it was true, and it really did work for you guys. We have a segment on this podcast called Cool Connections, whether it's a household name or someone who has meant a lot to you in your journeys, or anyone on the Tigers, or perhaps another household name that has really been helpful to you with your career.
I would say the person who was probably most helpful to me on the Tigers for my career was probably Doug Bachler, the AAA pitching coach. I think he really did a good job of kind of simplifying the game and kind of bringing the human element back into the game for me. I think there's a time where I got too much into the analytics and just trying to make my pitches nastier and throw harder, where he kind of got me more into like, at the end of the day, like your stuff's good enough if you just execute. So he kind of got me back to focusing on pitching as opposed to just having good stuff and throwing. I think that's probably the biggest thing that helped me with the Tigers.
Was Chris Fetter also helpful when you moved up to that big league level last season? Of course, pitching coach for the Tigers. Was he helpful during your success with the Tigers stint?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Fetter's obviously a great coach and he did a great job. I think the Tigers had their second best year pitching in like 50 years or something. So like he obviously did a great job last year, and I didn't get to work with him as much, but when I did, I definitely felt like he gave me some helpful cues and just gave me some little tidbits here and there that could be helpful for sure.
You were with Gastonia for 5 games in 2023 from Wilmington, went to Western Carolina. Is it safe to say you're very comfortable pitching here in North Carolina?
Yeah, I'm definitely comfortable pitching in North Carolina. It can get pretty hot in the summer, but I've always loved North Carolina, and I've recently moved to South Carolina because that's where my wife's from, but still not too far away. And yeah, I just love the area, and I just love to compete in baseball. So
Gastonia is the only team you've played for that has not been affiliated with an MLB team. You haven't been with any other indie ball team. So what drew you to Gastonia specifically?
the biggest thing, honestly, was it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours from where my fiance at the time was living, now wife. So it was pretty easy for her to come see me when on like the weekends, or if she got off work early and I was pitching that night, she could come watch. So that was probably honestly the biggest thing. I know they had a lot of guys come from there that got signed as well, but combination of knowing guys get signed out of Gastonia and my wife being so close were definitely the two biggest factors.
And then what was it about Gastonia that helped you showcase your skills and then move back to affiliated ball during that 2023 season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just gave me the opportunity, and I was able to throw well enough. The Tigers saw something that they liked, and I know I talked to Marcus Walden about my cutter, and I think he helped me make my cutter just a little bit more effective. I think that also helped. But I think just getting on that stage where there are eyes watching you is always a good thing. So
Yeah, I read that Marcus Walton taught you a new cutter grip while you were here in 23. What exactly did you change with your grip after talking to Marcus?
I didn't really change the grip as much as my mindset while throwing it. I was throwing it more. I called it a cutter, but it was almost more like a gyro slider. And he basically just told me to take that grip and just throw it like a fastball. So instead of like a slider, it turned into more of like a true cutter, which gave me a different look and kind of paired better with my overall arsenal than the more gyro-y slider did.
You have five pitches: four seamer, cutter, sweeper, changeup, and curveball. You throw primarily your cutter, changeup, and curveball to righties and your sweeper to lefties, at least according to Baseball Savant. How have you mastered the ability to tailor certain pitches to righties and others to lefty hitters?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just being able to throw all of them for strikes. If you can throw them all over the plate, then you just have to figure out what goes better. Like typically, a sweeper to a righty is not going to go as well because it tends to go to the bat path, or like a cutter in on the hands, he'll play well to them. I don't throw a sinker, but if I had a sinker, like sinker to a righty doesn't really play. Like I don't want that to lefties, and like my cutter doesn't really play to lefties. It kind of runs back into the bat path. So it's all about like matchups and figuring out what pitch plays versus which side of the play, and also looking at scouting reports to see if one if a hitter handles one pitch better than another or whatnot. So
Also on Baseball Savant, you can see that you don't get hit hard. Average exit velocity and hard hit percentage rate really good for you. Also, your chase percentage is really good. It's at 34%. So how much of an advantage is that you don't get hit hard and you also get hitters to chase a lot?
yeah, I mean it definitely helps. I think a lot of that is that when you can get ahead in the count early and you have a lot of shapes, they don't have a hard time knowing what to look for. So being able to throw a bunch of different pitches and different counts kind of allows me to set hitters up in different ways and hopefully get them to chase or put something in play with weak contact. So
During the off season, like right now, for example, how do you train to further develop your pitch mix and maybe even gain velocity and increase spin rate, which of course is a big thing right now?
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, right now I'm trying to. My biggest thing right now is I'm just trying to lift for like power instead of for most of my career is trying to get stronger. But now at this point in my career, I'm more trying to just move faster and kick quicker. As far as pitch mix, I've kind of learned at some point you can stop trying to make things better because you're only going to make things worse. So pitch mix, I'm pretty happy with. I might play with a sinker, but overall, I think my pitch mixes are good. I'm not really worried about making them better. I'm hoping moving faster could possibly add more velo, but outside of that, just try to keep doing what I did last year because it worked pretty well for me. So,
Now, Brian, you just signed with the Chiba Lotte Marines of the NPB, the Nippon Baseball League in Japan. So how did that come about?
yeah, so I had a few Asian teams reach out to me even like mid season last year. The Tigers didn't really want to let me go at that time, and I didn't really want to go when I was that close to achieving my ultimate dream. So, but then the season ended. The Tigers waived me from their 40 man to make room for some of the guys coming off the 60 man IL. And so I had a few Asian teams reached out, and I had a few minor league offers that were pretty good for minor league offers, but they just didn't compare money wise to what I can make over there. So I had a couple Korean offers, and then I had another Japan offer that was actually a little bit more money, but it was basically a 3 year deal where I only really want to commit for one right now. So the Chiba Lotte of all my offers, Chiba Lotte seemed like the best fit for me, and I'm I'm excited to see what it's all about next year.
Now, Chiba Lotte, it's the same team that Roki Sasaki pitched for in his career, who's about to get a lot of money in Major League Baseball this season. Dallas Keuchel pitched for the Marines last year. How confident are you that you'll be able to get back to the bigs, especially because of how well known the Marines are?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm at this point, I'm just focusing on pitching well this year, and obviously, I'm hoping I throw well, and maybe a team wants to give me a big league offer. We'll see what happens, but I mean, I definitely feel like I proved that I can pitch at the big league level last year. So hopefully, we can go over to Japan this year, throw really well, and maybe come back on a big league deal. But whatever happens, I'm gonna put it in God's hands and just trust Him. So.
I know the plan is for you to join the starting rotation like you did in the minor leagues, like you did with Gastonia. Do you prefer starting to coming out of the pen?
Uh, yeah, I would say if I had to pick, I'd probably choose to be a starter. Where I mean, especially if it's going to get me to the big league level, I'll do what it takes to win. Like I like winning, and I hate losing. So whatever the team needs me to do to be the best fit to help the team win, that's really the job I want to do.
It's a sign of a true competitor, right?
That's all right.
We have a pep talk segment, Bryan. What is the best advice you have ever gotten? Could be about baseball, could be about life in general.
Best advice I've ever gotten. Uh, Let me see if I can remember this quote I heard one time. It was like, "Fear isn't real; it only exists in your thoughts of the future." So it's like whatever you're scared of, it's not real. You're basically creating this made up scenario in your head. And I kind of thought when I heard that the first time, I kind of thought about it and was like, that's pretty true. Like if most of the time when we're scared of something, it's probably not even what's going to happen. It's the thought that it could happen, but you'll miss out on a lot of opportunities if you never face that fear. So
Is there a time when that's actually played out for you where you've started to get nervous about something and then you thought of that quote?
I'm sure there is. There's nothing off the top of my head. I mean, maybe honestly, maybe a little bit about going to Japan, just going to a country I've never been to for 8 months or however long it'll be, and going to going to a different culture where I don't speak the same language and everything like that. That's probably honestly the best example is just I don't know if I would have done that a few years ago. So the opportunity to do that now is pretty cool.
Have you talked to anybody about that in terms of the preparation? Of course, Ian McKinney, the player coach for Gastonia in
Mm.
2023 when you were on the team, went to Korea during that season. Have you talked to anybody about what it potentially could be like?
I haven't like reached out to anybody, but I have like just throughout the years talked to a few players who I've played with that like have gone over to Japan or Korea, and I mean everybody I've talked to has basically said they loved it and said like if you ever get the chance, you should just do it just to experience it. So I'm looking forward to that. And then my agent and the assistant general manager of Chiva Lotte has kind of talked to me about some of the things to expect, and I'm sure they'll talk to me more about more things to expect as we get closer to time to head over there. But,
Did you find yourself rooting for the Tigers in the playoffs? Of course, you were not on the postseason roster at that point, but did you still find yourself rooting for Detroit because it was still the same players that you were with?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't on the roster, but I was in what they call a stay back group, where just in case somebody got hurt or something, I was still in Toledo training every day. And every day they had a game, we'd go to the clubhouse and we'd watch the game and cheer them on from the clubhouse. And then when they got to the ALDS and they had those two home games, we were able to get to the two home games. So that was a pretty cool experience for sure.
They were close, right? Scooble on the bump game five.
Yeah.
That's what you want. That's what you wanted for the Tigers.
Yeah. I think they were six outs away in game four, and then Tarek Scooble on the mound for game five. They had it set up well. They just unfortunately didn't work out, which that's baseball for you. But it was really cool to see how well they competed in the playoffs, and I'll still be rooting for them next year, even if I'm not with them. So
Still beat the Astros, right? I mean, that's something
that's
to
right.
hold your head low about. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
About to enter 2025. What is your New Year's resolution going to be for the
Hmm.
new year? What do you think?
Probably try to read the Bible a little more. That's one place I feel like I could be better at in my life. So that's probably the biggest one that I can think of off the top of my head is just try to read the Bible more and get into my faith a little bit more.
Have you found you've bonded with religious players, pitchers or hitters a lot in the minor leagues and even with the Tigers?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another thing you can kind of have a connection with somebody. I feel like anytime you meet somebody new, you try to find common connections. So that's one thing, especially like last year we had a guy named Riley Unroe in Toledo who was, I think he, like when his baseball career's over, he wants to be a pastor. So he was really big on like kind of leading our like we have a chapel every Sunday, but he started leading like a Bible study, and he was like a big part in helping everybody kind of grow in their faith. And I think having guys like that on your team who show it so outwardly make it a lot easier to trust in your faith and kind of show your faith more, and just maybe step out of your comfort zone a little more in that aspect.
Brian, what is the goal for you baseball wise as we head into 2025?
I wouldn't say I have a set goal as far as like I want to have this ERA or this number of strikeouts. I'd say the biggest thing is just go out there and compete and give it my best effort every day and just see where it takes me.
Well, so far it's taking you to the big leagues. Took
Yeah.
you to the big leagues for 6 games in 2024. I can't wait to see where it takes you further. Best of luck in the Nippon Baseball League, Brian, and thanks so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I look forward to the opportunity, and I appreciate you having the opportunity to have me on.